stream it to my page, and then from my page over to the Blaze page.
Oh.
Sometimes the wonders of technology fail us, but we get crafty and we work around. Perfect. So I'm just going to say, hi, everybody. Welcome. I am so excited to be hosting Robert Dugoni today, and I'm going to be streaming this interview over at a Mighty Blaze. So come join us over there. And we are going to talk about all the things, mysteries and thrillers. So just come on over there to a Mighty Blaze, and we will be chatting there. Okay, and now I click it over there. Okay. And just take one more second to get over there.
You are much braver than I am.
This pandemic has made me technologically brave. I think, what is that expression? Necessity is the mother of invention. The pandemic is my mother.
I am a technology neophyte, so I'm impressed.
Oh, I hear you. I feel it is not always an easy thing. So I just want to say, welcome, Mighty Mystery fans. I'm your on-air host, Sara DiVello, and I'm thrilled today to be hosting Robert Dugoni, who is, of course, the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and Washington Post best-selling author, also Amazon charts topping best-selling author of the Tracy Crosswhite series. And he is here to talk to us today about his brand new book, The Last Agent. If you love espionage fiction as much as I do, you're going to want to tune into this interview. Robert, tell us about your book.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Really thrilled to be here and thrilled to get a chance to talk about The Last Agent. The Last Agent is the sequel to The Eighth Sister. And in The Eighth Sister was sort of a little bit of a sequel to The Jurymaster, which is where I first introduced Charles Jenkins. But in any event, Charles Jenkins is a former CIA officer who's sort of living in limbo up on a small island here in Washington State called Camano Island. And his former CIA station chief in Mexico City shows up at his home and says, basically, we need you, and here's why we need you. And Jenkins is reluctant, but he's also in a difficult situation. Like, you know, you just mentioned necessity is the mother of invention, and he has a need to take care of his family. So he agrees to go back to Moscow and perform the task that he believes he's been asked to do. He gets there and he realizes everything's been a double cross and he's running for his life. And the short and long story is he'll make it back to Camano Island, and he's back sort of living the life he had before, but he's had a taste now again of what it's like to be, working in that world. And he's not completely happy, but, he's happy with his wife and his kids and all that, but he's longing for something. And sure enough, a young CIA officer shows up at his farm, and Jenkins is ready to kill this guy because of what happened in The Eighth Sister. And he's told basically that the woman who was responsible for getting him out of Russia may be in one of Moscow's most notorious prisons, and they're trying to find out if she's there and can they get her out. And Jenkins is a guy with a very strong sense of morals and ethics and integrity, and he knows that if it wasn't for this woman, he never would have made it back to see his little baby girl get born. And so he goes, and it's a chase book from the very beginning. And the first thing he has to do is he has to recruit the FSB officer, Viktor Fedorov, because Fedorov's the only guy that can tell him if Paulina Ponomarova is still alive and where she might be. And so you never know if you can trust Viktor, but he's really a wonderful character. I loved writing him, and it's a chase book. Find her, see if she's alive, get her out of the country. And it was really a lot of fun to write.
Yay! Well, it is a lot of fun to read. Everything about that is so freaking fabulous, from Russian intrigue to this cat and mouse game to this, I think Publishers Weekly calling it a high octane thriller. Congratulations on that amazing review, by the way. The death-defying Russian prison, I am in for it. I actually speak Russian, so this is going to be especially interesting to me.
Oh, cool.
Yes, like every good Irish Italian girl, I speak Russian. But it is, yeah, so I can't wait to read this. So tell us about your research process. Have you been to Russia? How did you learn about Russian prisons? Do you speak Russian? Give us all the goods.
So yeah, no, I traveled to Russia in like 1997. I was there for a month. I spent a lot of time in Moscow, St. Petersburg, and it was really when Russia was just coming out
Yes.
of communism, and they were in perestroika. And
Yeah.
really what was most interesting about that whole event was getting a feel for the people and a feel for the country. And it's a really, really interesting country. It's the most fascinating trip I've ever been on. And just because the country is so different, and just trying to understand where the people have come from and what they've gone through from the czarist times through communism to being, democracy, and now back to sort of an authoritarian state.
Right.
So I traveled there. I didn't think at the time that this, I was going to be writing about it, but I did take notes and I did do all this stuff. And when I started writing the book, I mean, basically the reason I got into the story is because I had a former military intelligence officer get in touch with me about Charles Jenkins. And he said, "Where did you come up with this character?" And the trial that takes place in the Eighth Sister is very much like the trial that this man went through. He was acquitted of espionage. And I didn't write his story, but I asked him if he would help me. And he said he would. And then I met two other officers and they said they would help me. And, the fun part is I get to talk to people who do a lot more fun things than I do sitting on I get to talk to my friend who's a bush pilot and has landed planes on ice on one wheel. I get to talk to friends who are, snowmobile riders and scuba divers. And so for me, it's an adventure. It's a lot of fun to go through it. But probably the most interesting thing is that, when I went over to Russia, I don't know why I did this, but my brother-in-law convinced me to get a flat top and wear a blue beret, and everybody there thought I was in the military. So we were watched from the moment we landed. I was taken to a special room and interrogated, and they went through my luggage. And when I got out, we noticed there was a woman in white boots who followed us wherever we went. And so a lot of the things that transpire in the book come from the experiences that I had when I was over there. But it was really, I walked out of that country just enamored with it. I thought the people were lovely. And I thought the whole thing was just fascinating.
It is. It's so fascinating. And I also love Russian food. So wait, while you were there living in Russia for a month, do you speak Russian or you just were navigating around? How did that go for you in 1997? Yeah. Because it's with the Cyrillic alphabet, you can't even read it.
No, you can't read it. You can't do any of that. And that's what I mean about learning the people. So, for instance, we would be someplace in Moscow and we'd be trying to get to another location. And the only way we could get there would be to tap someone on the shoulder or say, excuse me. And I forget how you say it. Is it Dabrowski or something? Anyway, we'd say, excuse me. And their first reaction is they look at you.
Oh, how you say, excuse me? Oh, извините меня, пожалуйста. Excuse me, please. Извините меня, пожалуйста. Yeah, excuse me, please.
They'd look at you, like, what do you want? What do you want?
Right.
I didn't do anything. What do you want? So there was sort of this paranoia that you kind of had to get past. And then once you got past it, if you said to them, I'm an American and I'm trying to get someplace, and you tried to speak a little bit of Russian, they would literally, if they were going west and you needed to go east, they would turn around and take you there. Lovely people, but there was a paranoia that sort of underlied everything. And the other thing that was interesting to me is, you'd be in the Kremlin or you'd be in Red Square and you go into the museum and you see unbelievable wealth. I mean, unbelievable wealth. And then you drive 15 minutes outside of Moscow and you'd be in like Fiddler on the Roof, where the little shacks are in the mud streets and that they're tilting because, and you could see why these people they had an uprising. They had things going on. So a lot of research, and then a lot of books, a lot of online research. I do a ton of research before I write my books, and then I rely on people that have an expertise that I don't have.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I just want to welcome again all our fans on Facebook. this is your time. This is your access to Robert. So if you have any questions about his time in Russia, his brand new book, his writing process, anything you've always wanted to ask Robert Dugoni, now is your chance. Just type it right in the comments and I'll get that right over to him. While you're thinking of it, I have to share just a few words of your amazing praise. Publishers Weekly raving in bestseller Dugoni's Fast and Furious sequel to 2019's The Eighth Sister. Dugoni writes with such immediacy that readers will feel as if they're standing alongside Jenkins as he contemplates his next death-defying move. Fans of espionage fiction are in for a high-octane thrill ride. Yum. Yes. Medium saying, if you love international intrigue and spy thrillers, I know I do, this Heartstopper is a must read. Absolutely amazing. So Robert, you are an incredibly successful, incredibly well-regarded, acclaimed, best-selling author. Tell us your secrets. How do you write a book that is a quote high octane thrill ride? How do you keep those pages burning? How do you keep your readers up till 3 a.m. begging just one more chapter? Tell us.
Well, I met Elmore Leonard one time, the famous Elmore Leonard, and he's famous for saying that I don't write the parts that people don't read. I take that to heart a little bit. You don't want to be repetitive. You don't want to be duplicative. I think it's respecting the reader, right? It's respecting that you're writing to people that are intelligent, that can figure things out, that they can presume things, and then leaving white space for them to fill in the blanks. I mean, it's always really interesting to me when I talk to readers and they'll say, who do you see playing the role of Charles Jenkins? Who do you see playing the role of Matt LaFleur? And they have a completely different idea. And the reason they have a completely different idea is because I leave white space for them to fill in, and they fill it in with their imagination. And I think that's the most important thing in books is that, books are interactive. Movies come at us, but books are interactive. And so the reader becomes interactive. And I think what books are really about is about story, and it's about character. Okay, plots are plots. My plot has been done many times over, but it's the character and it's the story. And if you allow the reader that white space to get into the character's point of view and into the character's frame of reference, then they become part of the story. And I think that's really the most important thing, is letting your readers become part of the story and being respectful of your readers and of their intelligence.
Oh my gosh, I love everything you just said. And there's so much meat here. I really want to pick it apart. So first of all, story and character over plot. So how do you write? What do you think is the most important part to writing a character that people resonate with, that people like? Why do people like Jenkins? How do you write Jenkins in a way that people love him so much?
Well, he's real. I mean, he's real.
Okay.
He has, a lot of times I think characters become only their job. So there are characters in books or in movies where they are defined by who they are. They are a police detective. They are this, they are that. Charles Jenkins, Tracy Crosswhite, they're not their job. Their job is what they do. But, Charlie is a 60-year-old man who got married late in life. He's got a younger wife. She's in her 40s. They have a 9-year-old son. They got a brand new baby. I mean, he has responsibilities at home. He has these things that he has to do as a spouse, as a husband, as a father. But he's also an operative. And that's his job. That's what he does. But what it really sets up is it sets up the stakes. I mean, what's at stake for Jenkins is really high. It's not just a matter of, well, he's going to die but he lives by himself and he's left. No, I mean, he's got a wife, he's got kids. He's going to leave behind a widow. He's going to leave behind children who are going to grow up without a father. I mean, there's all these things. And so I try to make my characters well-rounded, that they're not just a product of their job.
Oh my God, I love that, because it's so interesting. I feel like as Americans, like in real life off the page, so often we define ourselves by what we do. And one of the first things that you'll hear Americans ask when you meet them is, oh, what's your name and what do you do? As though what you do is who you are. Whereas if you live abroad, as I have and have traveled abroad and as you have, that doesn't come up until much later in the conversation for a lot of other cultures. But in America, it's right there. It's number one, and it's so identity defining. And what you're saying is that you're taking that same tendency that people also do on the page, which is to make what you do who you are. But of course, all of us are so much more than what we do. That's not the entirety of who you are. So you're saying that expanding that and making that person more well-rounded is what enables people to connect so deeply to your characters.
Yeah, I mean, not everybody can be a CIA officer, but many people can be husbands, and many people can be parents. And so I'll get emails from people all the time, and they'll say, you got this just right. I had a conversation with my son the other day, and it went exactly the way you put the book. And so it's a matter of it's a matter of making your characters real, bringing them to life and letting them live. And living life means not just what you do for a living, but, who your spouse is, who you marry. Are you happy in your marriage? Are you happy with your kids? I mean, and I can remember years ago when I was practicing law, I went into the deposition, and I sat in the deposition, and the guy who was taking the deposition, the whole time he was asking questions, he was building a wooden car. And I said to him at a break, I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, my son is in, now I'm drawing a blank, but they had this soapbox derby, and he forgot to build the car, and the thing was tomorrow." So he was building the car while he was taking and that's what I mean about a guy he's not just a lawyer taking the deposition. He's a father who's trying to appease his son, and by building a soapbox derby car.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love that analogy not that memory but that is analogous. Yeah. Oh, this is so amazing. Now let's take the next thing that you said about trusting your reader's intelligence. So I admit, as a writer, that's something I struggle with. I want so desperately to be understood and to connect with people in a really deep way. So I know that in conversation and on the page, I tend to be over-explaining, like, did you get it? Did you really get it? But are you sure you got it? And I have to keep reminding myself over and over, trust your reader's intelligence. But it is a fine line, because you don't want the person guessing it on page 2, but you don't want them to get to page 400 and say, well, where the hell did that come from? How do you manage that, Robert?
Well, a lot of times I don't tell people what my characters are wearing, for instance, because is what they're wearing important to the story at that moment? Do they need to know what they're wearing in order to drive the story forward? And most times they don't. They can just assume they're wearing clothes. I don't need to tell them how they comb their hair, I don't need to tell them all those things. And that's what I mean about allowing white space for your reader to fill in, and respecting your reader's intelligence. If your character is going to do something, you don't have to describe every single detail of the step-by-step at which they get there. The readers can presume they're going to get there. Jumping forward in scenes. You say, we're going to go out to dinner. Well, you don't have to show every step to get to the restaurant. You just put them in the restaurant. So, but more than that, it's presuming that they're going to figure things out, because that's what they're trying to do, especially in a mystery and a thriller. They're trying to figure out what's going to happen next. And so allowing them to become part of the story and allowing them to try to figure things out without laying it out for them, I think is what gets readers into the story and makes them begin to sort of try to look at what's going on the pages of the book.
Oh, I love that. Because that was my next question is, what can you give us an example of the white space that you allow? Because I do think, that is so important. It is an interactive process, and I love to have that space to do so. But it's always a balance of what do you tell and what do you hold back, not just in terms of the details, as you said, and I love that the way that you said it, does this detail move the story forward? Does this information move the story forward? I think that's probably a really good bar to set. But also when to reveal things, to reveal clues or plot points or whatever to keep it moving forward. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, let your character do it. Let your character figure out things, and when your character figures them out, the reader figures them out with your character. So, I always say, let your character be the smartest person in the book. And that includes the reader. So let your character figure it out, right? And the reader will be thinking ahead and think they'll get it. But you want things to be discovered as your reader discovers them. And if you do that, if things are discovered as your protagonist discovers them, your reader will be learning them along with the protagonist, and they feel like they're on this journey together.
Oh, wow. I love that. And it's so interesting because no one has ever said it in that way, of letting the protagonist discover things, letting your reader discover them at that time. That is such a such a different, and it makes so much sense. I totally get that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Robert, I have to pause and say that you have received some very exciting news about the eighth sister. Can you share that with our audience?
I can, yeah. We finalized a deal with Roadside Productions to have the Eighth Sister and the Last Agent turned into a television series or feature-length films. We don't know yet, but things were sort of put on hold down in Los Angeles when COVID hit and all those things. But we were able to get the deal was finalized, and I'm excited because when I spoke to them, they were really smart people. Roadside Productions did Manchester by the Sea and some other really terrific films. And they seem to be really intuitive about the book. They understood the characters, they understood the dynamics. So I'm anxious to see what they're going to do with it and how they're going to pull it off.
Oh my gosh, this is so freaking exciting. Congratulations. We can't wait to see it to see them both on the screen. Absolutely amazing. Do you see it in your writer's eye? Do you think it would resonate better on the big screen or as a limited series?
Well, I tell people all the time that one of my strengths is visual. I'm not really great with the smells and the hearing and all that stuff. But film is different. And when I was talking to the head of the studio, she had a whole different way of framing the story and moving the story around. It was the same story. It was just taking part of the ending and moving it up to the beginning. It was really, really brilliant. And the other thing I always say is, people ask me, do you want to write the screenplay? And the answer is no, absolutely not. There are people that go to school for years to learn how to write screenplays, and then they practice for years to get really good at it. And so I would much rather have somebody that's really intelligent and really knows how to do it. Let them do it. Because you have things like this happen where somebody comes up with a whole different perspective on how they're gonna paint the story, and it can be really brilliant.
I love that. I love that because I think so often there's the desire or the impetus to want to control things or to want to lead things or to have a finger in that process, but to trust their experts to do what they do best is, I think, very necessary, very important, and not something that everyone's able to do. So I commend that. I think that's amazing.
Yeah. Now, and it allows me to do what I do best, which is to write novels. I mean,
exactly.
That's what I do, and so I really try to stay out of the arenas that really are not my arena.
Now, when you're writing these novels, do you ever envision the actor that might, in your mind's eye, play Jenkins? Do you picture that person or no?
I do. When I was writing the Last Agent, Matt LaFleur came on the scene, and I saw Matt Damon, and he even looks like Matt Damon. But that's who I saw, playing that role, because I thought that would be a great interaction between Matt Damon and whoever is the character that plays Charles Jenkins. So yeah, I will see people in my mind. And sometimes they're real actors and sometimes they're not. I don't know who they are, but they're people that are in my head.
What about Victor Fedorovsky? Did you ever picture him?
I have an idea, and I don't know that I can remember the man's name, but he was the guy who played oh, I'm drawing a blank. He was in the movies where the guys can transform into, they have special powers. Anyway, I know who the guy is. I can't think of his name, but I always saw him sort of in my head as I was writing Fedorov, who's a great character, by the way. I love Victor Fedorov. I love writing
Fedorov, not Fedorovsky. Sorry, Fedorov.
No, I loved writing him.
And now, what about the Russian prison part? Did you ever go look at a prison in Russia? Did you research it online? I think one of my worst nightmares is to end up in a Russian prison or a gulag. Like, that is especially terrifying. Yeah. Walk us through what you were thinking about.
So there's very little out there.
Yeah,
little, as you can imagine, there's very little, especially on a prison like Lefortovo. They're just not going to have much out there. But there are people that have been held there and released, and they've come back home. And so I was able to find, brief descriptions on what it was like.
Oh, wow.
Where they were transferred from, and even things like courtyards where prisoners were executed. And so I was able to sort of pull things out. You know, they said that there were moments where prisoners would be walking down the hallway and they'd have guards on each side of them, and there'd be a nook in the side of the wall that the prisoner would never see. And they'd walk past it and someone would step out behind them and shoot him in the back of the head. You know, so through...
Wait, was that their style? Was that how they did the executions, or that just was prison violence?
No, it was just to always keep them on edge, right? They just never knew what was going to be where they were going, they would never see the outside. They're told a lot. They'll be told things like, okay, you got a 2-year sentence. And then with a month left in their sentence, they'll have something put in their cell, you know, contraband put in their cell, and say, well, your sentence just got extended for 6 more months. There's a book out there called The Best of Enemies, and it's about a CIA officer and a KGB officer who end up becoming friends. And the KGB officer is thrown in prison several times. And so he came out and he wrote about his experiences in those prisons, and really horrible, horrible things. I mean, the space was so limited that you had to take turns lying down to go to sleep, because not every prisoner could lay down and go to sleep at the same time. You know, just really horrific conditions. You know, I relied on those things mostly, as I relied on sort of personal accounts of people who had spent time there.
Wow, I'm amazed that you were able to find those personal accounts. That's really cool.
Yeah, no, it's hard.
So Robert, what's one thing that you want people to feel or experience or walk away from this book having felt?
I just want them to have fun. You know, I just want them to be entertained. Just let them be entertained and let them have fun, and let them take their mind off of sort of the present day issues that we have going on between COVID and the politics and social injustice and all those things, and just escape for a few hours and you know, go to Moscow, go to St. Petersburg, and go on a run, you know, go on a chase.
And that's so necessary always, but now more than ever, because things do feel very, very heavy out there. And I found myself seeking solace on the couch and the comfort of a book and a cup of tea this weekend, because you do need that mental escape to be getting through life right now.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. What are you working on now?
So I have another Tracy Crosswhite book, which will be out next April. It's called In Her Tracks, and that was a lot of fun to write. It's she's going back to Seattle homicide, but her job is not there because her boss is a jackass, and so she goes to cold cases, and she's got to decide if she wants to stay in cold cases. And anyway, she gets involved in really 2 cases that the story revolves around: a young girl who's missing, and then another girl who goes out for a run. So it's 2 girls who are missing, and which is why In Her Tracks. And then next September, my second literary novel, the novel after The Extraordinary Life of Sam Hell, will be out, and it's called The World Played Chess, and it's based on that saying, the world played chess while I played checkers. It's a story. It's a coming of age story for young men. 1979. Graduate from high school, just wants to spend his last summer before college with his buddies. He gets a job on a construction crew with 2 Vietnam veterans, and one of them starts to go through PTSD. And he begins to realize, you know, that he has no idea what the world is truly like in his doing. So I'm excited about that one. I'm in the developmental edits of that one. And so I have 2. And then, you know, I started to do research and just started to begin to plot outline some plots for the 3rd Charles Jenkins book.
Wow. So you're able to do all those things.
We'll see, but there's a 3rd one to kind of finish the story.
Yay. Wow. And you're able to do those 3 very separate tasks of research brain, keeping your brain in research, developmental edits on a very different genre, literary work coming out in September, and then also working on another thriller out in April. How do you do that?
Well, first of all, I love what I do. I mean, I love to tell stories, so that makes it easy. I practiced law for a number of years, and so multitasking is sort of a necessity for lawyers. You're working on something and something blows up, and you got to divert all your attention immediately to that other thing and dive right in and you know, devote your focus to that as well. So you know, as we're talking today, I saw an email come in, and it was from my developmental editor, who's also in Boston. And she was sending back the developmental edits for my next book, The World Played Chess. So, you just kind of roll with the punches every once in a while, and do what you need to do to get done what you need to get done.
And what does your writing practice look like? Do you rise with the sun? Do you have specific hours? Do you wait till inspiration strikes? Do you work 8 hours a day? Is it an easy, the words flow because you love to do it? Or are you like Hemingway crawling your way through a desert and struggling for every word? What's that look like?
I love it. I've never really run into a problem with coming up with an idea and then being able to write it. I do take the weekends off now. I used to write, 7 days a week because I was also working part-time as a lawyer. But since 2013, I've been writing full-time. And, I'll be 60 next February. So it's time for my wife and I to enjoy some things, play some golf, travel a little bit when we could. And just sort of enjoy life a little bit more. But I take it seriously. I have a strong work ethic. Part of that came from practicing law and learning long hours. And part of it came from being raised by my mom and dad, who had 10 kids. You mentioned you're Irish Catholic. Irish Italian. I'm Irish Italian too. My mom was Irish, my dad was Italian, and they raised 10 of us. And, in order to do that, they had to work their butts off. And I saw what they did, and they made an investment in me and an investment in my brothers and sisters. And it's an investment that I take very seriously. So my mom is my guiding inspiration. She's the one that got me into loving books. She's 87 years old. She's losing her eyesight. And I feel terrible for her because she was always this huge, voracious reader. And so she's my inspiration. She's my guiding light when it comes to my writing.
Oh, I love that. Does she ever listen to audiobooks?
She does. And she's not technologically the most savvy, but when I go down to visit, we get everything kind of set up, and she'll listen to my books when I write my books when they're on tape. So yeah, she listens now.
Oh, I love that. And same, Irish mother, Italian father. I love that. Oh my gosh. Well, Robert Dugoni, you have been a joy. Thank you so much for joining us here on A Mighty Blaze. It has been such an honor to have you. Again, everybody, go buy this book, The Last Agent. The link is in the comments. We have a very special partnership with bookshop.org, which of course supports independent bookstores, which need your love right now. So you can buy Robert's book today and enjoy this high octane thrill ride, according to Publishers Weekly. Again, Robert Dugoni, New York Times bestselling, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, Amazon charts topping bestselling author. What an honor to have you. And thank you for your extremely insightful, incisive, on point sharing your craft with us. This has been an illuminating and educational experience, and such a pleasure. Thank you so much. And we will, and when your book comes out in April, please come back. We'd love to have you back for the Tracy book.
Love to do it. Love to do it. Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. We'll see you next time here on A Mighty Blaze.
Bye-bye.